Ikawakahiko, Mamualoa, Ho'ino, O Kapenakuke. Once upon a time, a really, really long time ago, before Captain Cook, all right, there was a legend in Polynesia about two magical trees. And this legend was spread out throughout all of the islands. Everybody knew about it. And the storytellers would go from island to island telling about it. Now, one tree had the magical ability to be able to produce an unlimited, endless supply of fish. Now, when the storytellers told the story, you kind of got the impression that the fish came up from the roots and they came out the trunk and they fell into people's baskets. Well, you know, fishing is a lot of hard work. And the fishermen would love to hear this story, okay? Because, oh, wow, if it was only that easy. And so the storytellers, of course, would embellish it, but that was the one tree. Now, there was another tree. This tree would provide an endless supply of vegetables. And again, in listening to the story, you kind of got the idea that they came up from the roots, out the trunk, and fell into people's baskets. Well, this is a story that the farmers loved, okay? Because of the same reason. Oh, man, that sounded really good. Farming in old Hawaii was a very, very hard work as well. So the storytellers would, because farmers and fishermen and people on islands can't live completely on fish, and they can't live completely on vegetables. When the storytellers told the story, why, it was always both trees were included in this. The curious thing is they never said what kind of tree it was, unless they did it for, let's say, on a local island, they might have done it for a local purpose. But these fabulous trees came from elsewhere, somewhere mysterious. And so, in storytelling, they told these stories in a different way than we tell stories today. The storytellers had two roles in society. One of the roles was to entertain. And so this was something needed for people who had, compared to what we do, a pretty boring life sometimes, a life sometimes of drudgery, a life sometimes of pain. And here come the storytellers, and for a little while take them away from all of that. Then there were also another role that they played, and that was they were keepers of the wisdom. Because the wisdom of the culture would also be in the stories. And that's what they would do. Okay, that was another very important role. In modern times, we tend to like our stories about wisdom, especially, and sometimes even about adventure, real tight and to the point. Tell us what the facts are, or give us an entire lifetime, multi-generation adventures in under 2 hours. Okay? Because the movies are expert storytellers at doing that kind of a thing, and that suits our modern purpose. But in the ancient times, people liked their stories to be something like a sumptuous feast, with many dishes served one after the other, and accompanied by song and dance. To put it another way, we could say that they liked their stories clothed in interesting events and interesting characters. And a story that I might tell you, like the story I'm telling you today, in just a few minutes actually, in the ancient times, this would be a whole day or a whole night because of all the things that they would put into that story. Now, some people, looking at all times, even the storytellers of the ancient times had this kind of a problem, because not everybody listened to the story for the same reason or in the same way. So some people, they hear only the story, and they don't hear the wisdom. And other people hear only the wisdom, and they don't hear the story. Some people can't see the forest for the trees. Now, that's an old phrase, but what it really means is that they can't see the big picture because they're too focused on the details. And some people can't see the trees for the forest. They're so focused on the details, they can't see the big picture. Okay? And this is always. On the last part, some people like a student who would want only the facts. Going to a lecture, he wants only the facts. Don't give me anything else. Doesn't even want the dates. And to use a kind of a medical example of this, why it's like knowing why the heart has a problem, but not knowing exactly where the heart is. So it doesn't always work very well. Now, back in ancient Polynesia, there were two brothers. Both of these brothers were, naturally, sons of chief. It's hard to find a Hawaiian legend or a Polynesian legend where the hero is not the son of a chief. Okay? So they were sons of chief. One of them was named Hema, and the other one was named Akau. And they loved the stories just like everybody else, but they, listened to them differently and different things out of them. When Hema heard the story of the fabulous trees and the adventurers who went and got them and brought them back to wherever they did, why, he got all excited and wanted adventure. He wanted to do what they did. He wanted to go out and learn, and not so much learn, but see and do new things. Now, his brother was different. His brother was more interested, a cow, he was more interested in, where did they go? How did they get there? And what did the trees look like? Because, like I said, that was kind of a vague part of the stories. He was convinced, however, that the trees existed. One thing I didn't tell you at the beginning, the thing about these trees, they would do all these fabulous things, but only if you could see them. And a cow became convinced that to see them meant to find them. So he and his brother got together, and after long evenings over the kava bowl, kava is one of the most popular drinks in Polynesia, in case you didn't know that. And it's mildly narcotic, they say, which gives you a buzz. You can't get drunk on it, but you can get numb. Okay. So, no problem with driving under the influence because your body can't move. Okay. So, anyway, over many evenings of the kava bowl, talking about all of this, they decided to set off an adventure and find the trees. So first of all, they had to go to their father and ask him permission. And of course he gave it, or I wouldn't be able to tell you the story. So they started getting all the things together that they had to get together. The brothers themselves were good at sailing between the islands of their island group. But, they didn't know anything about stuff beyond that. There was a man, however, on the farthest island of this group who had the reputation of having sailed on much, much farther voyages. And so they went to see this man. His name was Kalimua. And so they went there to visit him, and they told him what they wanted to do, and they asked him to go, and he said, I'd love to, but I'm really too old. But my son, I've taught almost everything I know, and I offer him to you, Kelly Hope. And so the sons didn't have anything better, so they accepted Kelly Hope to be their navigator. Because he did know where his father had gone, even if he hadn't been there yet. So they started with that. Now they had to get a fisherman. Because when you're going a long voyage like that with an open canoe, off in the deep ocean, it's not enough to know how to fish near the islands. You had to know deep ocean fishing. So they found a deep ocean fisherman and convinced him to go along with them. Now, another thing that was necessary was a farmer, because they had to know someone who knew something about foods. They were going to land on different islands. They had to know what could be eaten, what could be prepared, and how to prepare it, and what's stored best, and what could be dried, unsmoked for when they're leaving and traveling. So they got a farmer to go with them. And finally, especially in ancient times, one of the most important things, they had to get a kaula. Now, kaula is a special type of person. That's the Hawaiian word for it. The only feasible translation is a prophet magician. And what that really means is he had the ability to read omens, and from those omens, determine pretty much, based on what's happening now, what probable outcomes will be. Okay? The navigator, of course, knew about the flights of birds as far as direction goes, but the kaula could tell more deeper meaning within those flights. Okay? And other kinds of things that might happen in nature, and they read people very well. The magician part comes when the omens look bad, and this was the clever thing about this guy. He would know the ritual or know the practice or know what to do to make it turn out good. So that's really important. Today it would sound like he was using prayers and spells, but he was very good at his job. So they found a kaula to go with them too. Now it took a long time to prepare. They had to have a special canoe for the deep ocean, and they had to get to know each other. And always, inevitably, they had to learn a little bit about each other's skills. That was necessary. So the brothers had to learn a little bit about navigation, so they could help the navigator. They had to know some more about vegetable foods and storage. They had to know some more about fishing, because you can't count on the one person all the time. They also had to know how to help with the prayers and the spells, because sometimes it takes more than one person to do a ritual. So more and more things were being learned as they prepared. But finally the day came, and after a big farewell feast, off they took on their travels beyond the islands that they knew, heading first of all for the last place that Kelemua had been. You know, remember the old navigator. So they finally reached that place. And the people there, of course, were very nice. They didn't know where the trees were, but they also, you know, did know about some other islands further on, and they had maps. Now, some of you might think, what do you mean they had maps? How could they have maps in ancient times like that? They did, and some of those maps are still in use today in Micronesia. The map is, if we looked at the map, it would look like an odd-shaped bunch of strips of bamboo in straight lines, with little cowrie shells glued to them at different places representing islands, and then curved strips of bamboo all across the map representing winds and currents. And they could look at that, and that would tell them everything they needed to know for when and how to go to other islands that had been mapped. Okay? Very clever. So anyway, they went from island to island, on and on, traveling and searching. Oh, they learned so much. They met so many people. They learned how different ways of different people to solve the same problems that they were familiar with. That was remarkable. On and on they went. It was a long time. It was years, actually, they were traveling around the big ocean, but they never found the trees. Finally, the day came when Hema had grown tired of adventuring, and a cow got homesick. And so they decided to, all right, we've done the best we can, we're going to head home. And so that's what they did. So they came all the way back home, and sad a little bit because they hadn't accomplished their goal, but, you know, happy with everything that they'd done and things they'd seen and what they'd learned. Now, as they got home and they landed on the shore, and they said farewell to their crew, and the two brothers started heading for their, you know, chiefly compound. So as they're walking along, Hema's looking down the beach, and he sees these fishermen, and they're mending their nets, you know, under the palms and doing their lines and repairing and all that kind of stuff. And he says, "Oh, way, I see it. There it is. The tree of endless, limitless fishing." And a cow, he's looking inland. And just at that moment, he's looking at some farmers tending their taro patches. And he says, "Ka," which is another word in Hawaiian for wow. Okay? He says, "I see it. I see the tree of endless supply of vegetables. So what they see? Hema saw the coconut tree. But he saw it because of all his experiences and adventures, he was able to see it with completely new eyes. Because the coconut tree is what provides the fiber for the nets and for the fishing lines. An endless supply of the means to catch an endless supply of fish. And then inland, what did a cow see? A cow saw the ohia tree. He saw the tree in the digging sticks that the farmers were using, because that tree is a very, very hard wood, and it was the favored wood for the sticks that they would use to dig and cultivate the soil. And of course, that is what provided an endless supply of vegetables. And so they both found their magical trees. Was they able to see them like the old legend said? And so their voyage, they considered, was a success. Kipihola kika'au, so goes the story. Now, let's take off from that. Because the topic is how to manifest your goals. And I want to give you some different ideas about that. Before we can do that, in order to talk about manifesting goals, you have to really understand what a goal is. And there's a surprising amount of confusion about that. We can use sports as an example. And we'll use football. And this is valid whether we're talking about European-style football or American-style football. Still, at one end of the field, there's a goalpost. Or a goal basket, whatever you want to call it, but there's a goal, right? Now, it's a marker. That's all it is. Reaching the goal is not the purpose of the game. It's only a marker. It tells you how many times a particular team has reached the goal. That's called winning. Winning is also a marker, because you win, but that doesn't mean you win the game. So those are two kinds of markers that are used in the game. The purpose is playing football. That's a completely different thing. They can't play it without the goal. So it's very useful, but it's not the purpose of what they're doing. It's good to have markers to help guide us through life. And sometimes when people say goals, or some people resist even thinking about goals, they think of them really in terms of limitation. And, having a good day is a goal. Okay? So it doesn't have to be something great and grand that takes you away from what you really want to do. Okay? We all use them. We all have these little markers. Okay? Some people formalize them, some don't, but they're part of our way of living and our way of thinking. There's a difference. Another difference we need to know is the difference between a goal and a resolution. And at this time of year, that's a very good thing to understand. A resolution is a decision to do something or not do something. A goal is something you aim for. It's a target. There's a big difference between the two. You make a decision to do something, you've got to take action next, because neither decisions nor goals make anything happen. You make a decision, and then you have to do something that takes you beyond the decision. You set a target, you set a goal, and immediately you have to take action to move toward the goal. But they're not the same thing. One is like here, and one's over there, okay? And a resolution isn't much use unless you have a goal. A lot of people will make a resolution. I resolve to lose weight this year. That's kind of a namby-pamby kind of a resolution, okay? A goal would be, I'm going to get 2 inches off my waist, okay? Now, you could make that into a decision too if you wanted to, but there's a kind of a feeling difference between the two. One is you're moving toward, and one is you're just simply deciding. Okay? Still, action in the middle is essential. Now, in order to reach a goal, you have to have a plan. Now, you don't have to have a fancy plan. Oh, let's see, I'm going to get up today. Let's see, I think I'm going swimming. I better put on my swimsuit. Unless you're at Kahana Beach, okay. And there, you better put on your sandals, okay? Climb down that cliff. So there's a plan. There's a goal, there's a plan, and, you can carry it out. Doesn't have to be something all elaborate. Sometimes you want a goal, however, like getting a college degree that might take a lot of planning and a lot of steps on the way, okay, to do that. Okay, so that's the plan part. Now, plans don't make things happen either. They just sit there unless you act on them. Okay? They are, in a way, markers. The different parts of the plan help you stay on the path toward the goal, and carrying out your resolution, your decision, you still have to have action or nothing happens. Now, the downside of the upside of plans, the good part, is that sometimes they work. The downside, of course, is that sometimes they don't. And so that frustrates some people so badly that when the plan doesn't work, they feel like a failure. But people don't fail. Plans fail. And if the plan doesn't work, any smart person makes a new plan. Okay? Because that doesn't mean anything. People give up. And again, there isn't anything wrong with that if you finally decided, hey, the goal's not worth it. You have that right. But people don't fail. Now, in talking about the plans, let's have another understanding. We'll go back to sports again, because this helps really understand it. Get people, think, well, if I didn't do my plan right, or if I didn't do it right, let's look at baseball. In baseball, a very good player, I would say that he bats 300. That's a good player. Now, what does that really mean? A lot of people don't even think about it. The really way it's written out is .300, which is roughly 1/3, which means a really good baseball player hits the ball 1/3 of the time at bat. And he's considered a professional and worthy of paying a whole lot of money. Okay? 2/3 of the time, his plan doesn't work. His plan, what's his plan? His plan is to practice until he can hit the ball. And they do that, and they work hard at that. And yet, the plan fails over and over and over again. Now, if he identified with the plan, he'd quit after the first game. But of course they don't. Okay? It doesn't matter if the plan fails a whole lot, most of the time, you see. You just make a new plan and you work on that plan and you keep going and you win as often as you can. That's how it's done in the sports world. Look how well they do. Right? So, after the goal, which in this particular case, the goal was to hit the ball, okay? But after working on a goal, whatever kind it is, the next most important thing to consider, and this is not in sequence, in fact, this one ought to come first, is your purpose. Now, here's where there's a lot of confusion, too. A lot of people confuse, sometimes even dictionaries do this, a lot of people confuse purpose with goal. It's not the same thing. The purpose is the reason why you make a plan and set a goal. Sometimes it's called your motivation. And this is an emotional thing. Okay? An intellectual purpose is all fine and dandy, but you're not going to get your body and your subconscious or many other people to cooperate with you in bringing it about. There's got to be desire, or there's got to be love. The things you love are the things you will have more success at than anything else. that you like, that you enjoy, that you get pleasure from, we could use all those terms, those are the ones that will keep you making new plans. That will help you to set perhaps different or modified or new or better goals. That's the purpose. So that becomes another very, very important thing. No one does anything without a purpose. Anything. Somewhere deep inside, this motivates all action. Right? And the focus here, the real emotional reason, is the benefit, the emotional, sensory benefit of the purpose. That's what gets your whole being together to do and move toward what you want. Oh yeah, I'm going to go down Kahana Beach and see those naked ladies or guys. Okay, there's an emotional benefit there someplace that motivates somebody to climb down that cliff. Okay, and on that black sand, which can be real hot as hell on a warm day. Okay, nobody does anything without some kind of purpose that has an emotional or sensory benefit to it. And if we take a little time, we can find that in everything that we do. If you take a little more time and set an emotional benefit or a sensory benefit for something you want to accomplish, okay, wow, then you're going to have a much clearer time and you're going to be able to work your plans more successfully more often because of the motivation that's there. And one thing that motivation, when you have that kind of a strong motivation to do something, people talk about the law of attraction in lots of crazy ways that they don't understand. Motivation attracts people to help you achieve what you want. There's where the attraction is. Okay? It's not that it magically makes it appear out of nothing. Okay? But it's attractive. Okay? That's the secret of that kind of a thing. Now finally, here's one more thing. What I call goaling. And what do I mean by that? In the story, the brothers never did achieve the initial goal, which was to find those magical trees in the form that were described in the stories. Okay? On the way toward that goal, even though they didn't reach it, they learned a tremendous amount. They became not only older, but wiser. Their horizons were broadened, and their skills were deepened, and all kinds of wonderful things happened. Okay? Life is not about achieving goals. Life is about living. Goals, when you do it with awareness, right, can help you live that life more fully. And so just the idea of setting them, achieving them is less important than the journey toward them. Okay? That's where all the fun comes from. Right? A little small story. My younger brother, one time, he was quite young, he really wanted a shirt. Oh, he wanted this shirt, this one particular style shirt, more than anything else. And he knew that his life would be, bed of roses once he got that shirt. So finally he told me, I got the shirt. And, that was it. Yeah, that's right. See? Okay? There's goaling is really useful, can enrich your life, but it's only part of the process. The movement is what living is about. Okay? Pau ka'olelo. My tale is told. Okay? All right. Do we have any questions or comments on any of this? Yes.
Why do you find it so difficult to accept the fact that the journey is more important or as important as the goal? What do you think?
Well, people have this difficulty because of the values that are promoted in the society they live in. There are societies where that's not a question. Okay? But in a society where being successful is such a powerful motivation, just, even though you don't define it very well, okay? And most people define it by whether other people think they're successful. Okay? And some people don't ever feel successful because they haven't been successful in the way that they've defined it. And meanwhile, they're living an unhappy life with all the potentials for joy and things around them, okay? And part of that joy comes from interaction with, and the greatest joy comes from helping others along that way. But it's because of the values that are promoted by society, okay? A lot of people buy into that, and it's hard not to. You know, it's promoted in advertisements, it's promoted in stores, it's promoted on television, so it's understandable. But if people keep journeying along enough, most of them get wiser. And they finally realize, it's not about that. Okay? It's like, one of the things I love is all these people who strove and strove and strove, and finally they made all this great bundle of money, and they say, money's not important. Yeah, you got it. Okay. But they do discover that. The only person I know that didn't was J. Paul Getty. Because in an interview he said, somebody said, do you have enough money now? Billions. No, not yet. Okay. So some people get stuck. But most people find that, that's not what life is about. Okay. Yes.
Sometimes I enjoy the journey so much that I don't finish things.
Okay. Now, boy, when I start to think of all the things I haven't finished, that's only important when it interferes with living. Okay? That's only important when it interferes with living. If there's so many things you don't finish that they're starting to clutter up your room and you can't move, well, okay, then maybe it's time to do something about that. But this goes back to the old kind of thing with, I'm a kind of an elderly guy, and because I can remember belonging to the Clean Plate Club. Anybody here belong to that? Yeah, right, all you oldies. And this was mainly during the Second World War, because you had to clean your plate because of the starving children in China. That was the big thing, okay? And I remember the time when I asked my mom, Mom, why don't we send the extra to them? I got a nice whipping for that one. Not supposed to ask those kinds of questions. Clean your plate. It became something that you had to finish. And you weren't a good person if you didn't clean your plate. Now today it would be totally disastrous. Anybody who follows it today, we had, when I was growing up, our dinner plates were only 9 inches. Okay? We didn't have 12 to 18 inch dinner plates. Okay? So it was a little more possible in those days. But still, the idea came that you must finish something or there's something wrong with you. You're a bad person. You're hurting somebody invisible if you don't. And that's, that gets into the culture too. We'll stop and take a look. Is this harming me? Not finishing this, is this harming anybody else? Or I can just let it sit there until I feel like doing it. That's okay. But, it's up to you to take a look at it that way. And then, if you decide that really these things really do have to be finished, then you want to sit and find, okay, what's in it for me? Where's my benefit? Where's the pleasure? Am I going to give myself a reward after I finish it? Take a break and have a delicious snack or go someplace or see a movie or do something? Then that might be a strong enough motivation to get you to do it. See? Because you won't do it until that motivation's there. Okay. Anything else? Yes.
You mentioned the law of attraction and the misunderstanding, and your example sounds as if you were talking about fundamentally you're positively motivated towards something you love that has an emotional reward. And that will kind of rally the forces around you.
Yes.
This other part that I have heard about the law of attraction is actually feels that they both did the negative and the blame end. So this miserable thing happened to you, and kind of there are no victims, and you somehow attracted all of it,
Yeah, sure.
down in your head.
I know that's the way a lot of people think about it, which is why it doesn't work for them. Okay, because the idea that a lot of people have is you think negative thoughts, bad things, negative things will happen. You think positive thoughts, positive things will happen. Oh, that's one like the magical trees. Okay, life doesn't work that way if you pay attention. You think positive thoughts and then do something to move toward them. Okay, that's workable. But just sitting there thinking positive thoughts isn't going to bring it about. My mother, sweet woman, had a lot of money issues. And she used to have all these most beautiful positive thoughts. She would imagine herself swimming in pools of gold and coins and dollars falling down like rain upon her. She had the most wonderful time, and you couldn't get more positive. Okay? But when I gave her a way to add an extra $100 to her money, her income, she couldn't handle it. It was out of her range of doing something for that. Okay? So the positive thoughts by themselves just put out pleasant vibes. Maybe the person sitting next to you might feel good when you do it, but it's not going to make anything happen. Neither will the negative thoughts. Okay? Now, the thing with the negative thoughts, if you really dwell on them to the point where they influence negative behavior, whoa, you're going to get negative results. Okay? But not the thoughts themselves. If the thoughts don't result in negative behavior, then, well, have all the negative thoughts you like. Okay? They don't have enough energy to do anything. Okay? But you will, here's where the behavior changes. When you have a lot of negative thoughts, you begin to look at the negative side of everything, and you begin missing the positive opportunities. And so you look and say, oh, what a terrible negative world. I had a woman, I've got to share this, came to my house one time when I was living on Kauai. And she was all depressed because the world is falling apart. The world is in terrible shape. Terrible things are happening everywhere. There's no good to be seen. So I said, okay, hold it, stop. I said, stand up. I took her by the arm, and I took her to my window. And we looked out across the fields, to the cliffs, to the ocean, to the waves. I said, find something terrible that's happening. Well, no, not there. Okay, so we went to another window. Well, no, I said, I can take you anywhere on this island today, and you won't find any of these terrible things happening. And she finally, as I talked to her for a little bit, was realizing that she was taking bits and pieces of the news, thinking only of those things, not seeing the world around her. And of course, that was influencing her behavior to become depressed because that's all she was looking at. It's the same thing, with positive things. It just has a different, nature to it. When you're thinking positive things and seeing the positive in everything, there's a strong tendency to start seeing opportunities in everything. Not only opportunities for you to gain, but opportunities for helping people. One more story. Some of you have heard this, that's okay. There was one time, when I was talking with 3 friends, and we were talking about the news and newspapers. And so one of them said, well, I don't read the newspaper, so I don't have to look at any of that negative stuff. There were just three of us. The other guy said, well, I go through the newspaper, but I only look at the positive stuff. I said, well, fellas, I've got to tell you, I do it differently. I read the whole newspaper, everything in it, and enjoy the positive stuff and heal the bad. That was a very different way. Okay? So that's a way of looking at negative things and doing something about it to help change them. So some people are just so afraid of being aware of the negative. Well, that doesn't work. That blocks out all the opportunities for helping and making a change, making a difference. So it's not just a simple cut and dried positive negative thing. It's what you do about it. That's the action part that I wanted to emphasize. Okay. Yes.
You mentioned manifesting that you can tap into the power and energy all around you to help you. How do you do that?
Well, remember I talked about motivation? When you focus, we have one of the, we call it a principle. It's an observation that we have in this knowledge that we call Huna, is that energy flows where attention goes. So when you are focused on a goal with a lot of emotion, your energy is moving in that direction. That's what kind of pulls you toward it. Right? At the same time, it's attracting people and things and circumstances that can help you achieve that. Have you ever noticed, anybody here, when you get really interested in something, examples of it start popping up all over the place? Okay? Yeah, that's what happens. It's the energy of the interest, which is doing that kind, if we could call it attraction, attracting to you and you to it. Okay? So that's the power around you. It's a universe full of power and energy. But the only part you're going to be able to access is what you attract through your focus. Okay. Yes?
Sure. I do a lot of shaman work, and I also, in the recent years, do a lot of activism on the internet, because you can sign petitions and you can help different causes. And it seems the more I do that, the more requests come in for more help. And it's not just the petitions, because that's a click, that's a internet kind of thing, but it's also money. People start asking. When the politicians were asking for money, it wasn't enough to give $1 or $2 or $10. They wanted more every week. And now it's all these wonderful organizations that do good things.
Yes.
Okay, so I want to be the kind of person that doesn't like limitation. I want to keep stretching my limitations, but it seems like the need is greater than my ability to stretch.
That's right.
So
yes, now.
Either ignore the need or stretch faster.
That's one of the things with the kind of physical, mental humanness that we have. It's one of the things that we have to learn how to work with. Okay? Because our conscious mind is only capable of handling so much data at any given moment. Right? And our subconscious is unlimited. Our conscious mind can only handle all of this. Doesn't have to be in sequence. Multitasking is getting better and better. More and more people are stretching that way. But it doesn't matter, because it's possible. Here's one solution. It's possible to tell that part of you, whether you want to call it higher self or true or whatever you want to call it, it's possible to tell some part of you, when there's a need, do something to help it. You kind of give that direction to yourself. And you give that direction to yourself freely. Oh, there's something that just came up. Good. Help. Some people like to visualize a line of light or a cloud of color around it, or some people don't even have to bother with that. I know a lot of American Indian shamans, and I know what they do is they work with what they call power animals, and it's really a kind of a thought form that is intended to carry their energy. And so somebody needs healing, they don't have time for it, they got to do something else, so I'll send Beaver to do it. I'll send Wolf to take care of that. That's how a lot of shamans do it, okay? And if you think that that isn't enough, that's where you're getting into kind of a falsehood. Because it doesn't have to take a long time for help to have an effect. As we know, I've got a book over there called Instant Healing. It doesn't have to take a long time for healing to happen. Sometimes it does. And there's got to be multiple reasons for that. But most healing, for most people, most of the time, doesn't take more than an hour. Okay? So even a simple thought is going to help somebody and stimulate somebody. Now, you've got to understand here, we are assuming the existence as a natural factor of telepathy. Okay? Somebody said recently, you're teaching people how to be telepathic. No, I can't do that. They're already telepathic in the way that we look at things. So when I say this simple thought, send it out, give it a form if you like, it's going to have an effect. I know this from an awful lot of positive feedback and experience. You can start off doing it as a just on faith, if you like, but if you pay attention, the plan is going to work more often than not. Okay? Better than batting 300. Okay? All right, good.